The scene opens in a bustling airport terminal, where passengers bustle about, dragging wheeled luggage behind them and rushing to their respective gates. The camera pans to a large flight information board, announcing the departure of Flight 237 to New York. Excited travelers gather at the gate, their conversations filled with laughter, anticipation, and the occasional shout as loved ones say their goodbyes. Amidst the crowd, we focus on a confident black man in a crisp navy suit. His demeanor radiates professionalism, and he carries a sleek briefcase that suggests a serious business trip. He checks his watch and glances at the boarding area, a slight smile playing on his lips. With a few more moments before boarding begins, he takes a deep breath, feeling the buzz of the airport and the energy of those around him. As the boarding process begins, passengers line up according to their assigned groups. The man takes his place in line, observing the other travelers as they shuffle forward. He nods politely to the flight attendants, who greet him with warm smiles, appreciating their professionalism. He notices an older couple ahead of him, excitedly discussing their travel plans. The atmosphere is upbeat, filled with a sense of adventure and possibility. Once on the plane, the man finds his seat in the aisle. As he settles in, he takes a moment to organize his belongings. He places his briefcase under the seat in front of him, retrieves a notebook, and jots down a few thoughts for his upcoming meeting. The plane fills up with passengers, and the noise of conversation surrounds him, but he remains focused, preparing mentally for the discussions ahead. The last few passengers board the aircraft, and the man shifts slightly to make room. His eyes land on a white woman in her late 40s, who appears frazzled and disheveled. She is carrying an oversized handbag and a cup of coffee, which sloshes dangerously close to the rim as she navigates her way down the aisle. The man offers a polite smile as she approaches, but she barely acknowledges him, her eyes narrowed and focused solely on finding her seat. With a huff, she drops herself into the window seat next to him, a scowl on her face. The moment she settles in, she turns to the man, her expression darkening further as she sizes him up. "I didn't know this flight was going to be so crowded. Can you believe it?" she snaps, her voice dripping with irritation. "Isit says lika abuse dai fortrae, he replace mein kanikisko posur." He senses her tension, but chooses to remain polite, focusing on his notebook again. He believes it's best to diffuse any potential conflict with kindness. However, the woman is undeterred. "I just don't understand how they let so many people on a plane these days. Doesn't anyone care about personal space?" Her tone is sharp, and her eyes dart around as if searching for allies in her discomfort. The black man raises an eyebrow, but continues to keep his responses neutral. "I suppose it's just the nature of travel these days," he says. "Everyone has places to be." She huffs again, crossing her arms tightly. "Well, I don't want to sit next to someone who looks like they just came from the office." Her disdain is palpable, and her words linger in the air, filling the small space between them with tension. He takes a deep breath, reminding himself that he's used to people making judgments based on appearances. "I actually just wrapped up a meeting, and I'm heading to a conference in New York," he responds calmly, attempting to steer the conversation away from confrontation. "Right, of course," she scoffs, "because you people love to act all important." The casual derision in her tone is unmistakable, and he feels his heart race. This isn't the first time he's faced such ignorance, but the public nature of this situation makes it more difficult to navigate. The woman continues, seemingly emboldened by her own prejudice. "Do you even know how to conduct a meeting? Or is this all just a facade?" She leans closer, her voice dripping with sarcasm. The other passengers around them shift uncomfortably, sensing the hostility brewing. A couple of heads turn, and whispers ripple through the cabin. The black man takes a moment, his pulse quickening, but he remains composed. He knows that engaging with her on her level won't lead anywhere constructive. I assure you, I do know how to conduct a meeting. In fact, I've been in leadership roles for several years now, he states firmly, looking her directly in the eye. There's an edge in his voice, a calm assertiveness that surprises even him. But I believe that respect is important, regardless of the circumstances. She bristles at his response, narrowing her eyes and leaning back in her seat. Respect? From you? How quaint. I didn't realize that was your strong suit. Her voice is a low sneer now, and he can see the hostility radiating off her. The flight attendants begin their safety demonstration, but he feels like they're in their own world, the two of them locked in a silent battle. He glances around and sees that some passengers are watching intently, while others pretend to be engrossed in their screens or the demonstration. As the plane prepares for takeoff, the woman continues her tirade, each comment more offensive than the last. You really think you can just come here and act like you belong? Newsflash, you don't, she declares, her voice cutting through the hum of the engines. The black man clenches his jaw, weighing his options. He knows he can either engage with her, risking an escalating argument, or choose to rise above it. He opts for silence, focusing instead on the roar of the engines and the feeling of the plane lifting off the ground. But as the plane climbs, her words hang in the air, a reminder of the prejudices that still linger in society. He looks out the window, the ground shrinking away, and he silently vows that he won't let her ignorance define his experience. The flight attendants walk down the aisle, distributing snacks and drinks, but the tension between the man and the woman is palpable. Other passengers occasionally glance at them, some fidgeting in their seats, clearly uncomfortable with the unfolding drama. The woman continues to grumble under her breath, making comments loud enough for the man to hear, each one a slight aimed at undermining him. He feels the weight of her disdain, but he refuses to let it affect him. As they enter the cruising altitude, the woman leans in once more, her voice a low hiss. I hope you're not expecting to get any special treatment just because of your background, she sneers, her expression twisted in disdain. The black man closes his eyes briefly, drawing on his inner strength. He knows he must remain dignified. It's not about special treatment. It's about treating everyone with respect, he replies evenly, letting his words hang in the air between them. As the flight progresses, he decides to pull out his laptop and begin working. The hum of the engines and the sound of tapping keys help create a bubble of focus around him. But the woman's eyes remain fixed on him, a mixture of disdain and incredulity on her face. Little does she know, her actions on this flight will soon have consequences she never anticipated. As the flight continues, the atmosphere inside the plane becomes increasingly charged. The black man, focused on his laptop screen, types away furiously, working on a presentation for the upcoming conference. His mind races, processing data and ideas, attempting to drown out the incessant negativity radiating from the woman beside him. He glances at the screen, but her snide remarks weave in and out of his concentration. You know, it's really something how you think you're so important, she says, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You must think you can just waltz in and take over like it's nothing. He can feel his heart rate quicken as he tries to maintain composure. I'm just doing my job, he replies coolly, refusing to be drawn into her hostility. Everyone has a role to play, and I take mine seriously. She rolls her eyes dramatically, a scoffing sound escaping her lips. Right, because clearly you're the kind of person who knows how to manage a team. Her words are laced with contempt, and it's clear she sees his demeanor as a challenge to her worldview. He tries to ignore her, but her relentless barrage of insults makes it increasingly difficult. Let's face it, you don't belong in a place like that. This is corporate America. They'll eat you alive. She leans closer, a smug expression on her face, as if she's just revealed the biggest secret. With a deep breath, he shifts in his seat, hoping that physical distance will help ease the tension. But her voice follows him like a shadow. What? Are you going to lecture me about professionalism now? Spare me, she snaps, her impatience growing as she attempts to gauge his reactions. Around them, passengers are becoming more aware of the unfolding situation. Some glance over their shoulders, while others pretend to be engrossed in their reading materials, casting furtive glances toward the duo. The flight attendants, who had initially been focused on their safety demonstration, now notice the escalating tension and exchange worried looks, sensing the discomfort in the cabin. Look, I get that you're trying to be all high and mighty, she continues, raising her voice slightly as if she's addressing the entire cabin. But it's just sad, really. You're just a token, playing the part. Her derision drips with condescension, and the man feels a heat rising in his chest. His fingers pause over the keyboard, and for a brief moment, he considers responding with anger. But he takes a deep breath, reminding himself that he is not going to be the one who stoops to her level. You don't know anything about me, he replies, trying to keep his tone steady. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I won't let your ignorance dictate my worth. The woman leans back in her seat, crossing her arms, as if he's just provided her with further evidence to support her prejudices. Sure, you can say that. But it doesn't change the reality of the world we live in, she retorts, her voice dripping with self-righteousness. At that moment, a flight attendant approaches, her eyes flicking between the two. Can I get you anything to drink? She asks, a slight hesitance in her voice, sensing the tension. Just coffee for me, please. The woman responds dismissively, her tone sharp. The attendant nods and turns to the black man, who offers a polite smile. I'll take a water, thank you, he says, keeping his voice calm and measured. As the attendant moves away, the woman turns back to him, her expression contorting into a sneer. You're too nice. It's actually pathetic. He clenches his jaw, but maintains his composure. Being nice doesn't mean I'm weak, he responds, his voice low but firm. It means I believe in treating others with respect, regardless of how they treat me. Respect? She laughs bitterly, shaking her head. You think you can win people over by being nice? You've got a lot to learn. You think the world is just waiting to hand you respect because you wear a suit and carry a briefcase? I think respect is earned through actions, not appearances, he counters, his patience thinning, but his resolve firm. Oh, please, she snaps. Your actions? Like pretending to be someone you're not? You think you can fool us? We see through the facade. Her words are increasingly aggressive, and he feels the eyes of fellow passengers on him, a silent audience to this ugly exchange. Fooling who? I'm not here to impress you or anyone else, he states, his voice rising slightly. I'm here to do my job and represent my company. Your opinion of me doesn't matter. The woman scoffs loudly, her anger simmering beneath the surface. You have no idea what you're talking about. This isn't about your job. It's about what you represent. You're just a statistic, and everyone knows it. That's why you'll never really belong. With each word, her confidence seems to grow, and he can see that she relishes this opportunity to belittle him. He feels the anger rising in his chest, but he knows he must maintain his composure. The stakes are too high. He cannot afford to lose his dignity. Have you ever considered that your views might be part of the problem? He challenges, his voice steady despite the tension. That maybe it's not about me, but about your inability to see beyond your own biases. She narrows her eyes, and for a moment, he thinks she might actually pause to reflect. Instead, her face flushes with indignation. Oh, I see perfectly well. You think you're some kind of hero because you can spout empty platitudes. But let me tell you something. No one's going to save you. You need to realize that. He shakes his head, unwilling to engage further. I'm not looking for a savior, and I don't need your validation, he replies, his tone calm but firm. Just then, the plane hits a slight turbulence, causing the passengers to shift in their seats. The woman's eyes widen, and she clutches her armrest tightly, her bravado faltering momentarily. The brief interruption serves as a reminder of the shared experience they are all part of, even if she refuses to acknowledge it. See? Even the plane is uneasy with you around, she mutters under her breath, attempting to reclaim her earlier bravado. Or maybe it's just a normal flight, he replies, maintaining his calm. But if you want to blame your discomfort on me, that's your choice. She glares at him, but he notices a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, as if she realizes her words are starting to fall flat. As the flight attendants make their way down the aisle again, offering snacks and drinks, he glances around at the other passengers, who seem to be silently judging the exchange. He sees a few sympathetic looks directed toward him, and it gives him a small boost of confidence. The flight attendants pass by, distributing refreshments, and when they reach him, he takes a moment to compose himself. Thank you, he says politely, accepting the water with a nod. The attendant gives him a reassuring smile, clearly aware of the tension brewing beside him. As the woman receives her coffee, she takes a long sip, her eyes still fixed on him. You think you're so much better than me just because you can keep your cool? She says, her voice low, but laced with venom. That just proves you're insecure. I'm not better than anyone, and I don't need to prove anything to you, he replies, his patience wearing thin. What I'm trying to convey is simple. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of who they are or where they come from. Oh, is that what this is about? Respect? She snaps, her voice rising again, drawing the attention of other passengers. Respect is earned, and you're not earning any points with me. He takes a deep breath, realizing that this conversation is spiraling. Perhaps you should consider how you treat people. Respect is reciprocal, he suggests, hoping to redirect the conversation toward a more constructive tone. But she shakes her head, dismissing him. You're just delusional. You think you can lecture me? What's next? A seminar on diversity? The black man closes his laptop, knowing that further engagement might only lead to frustration. I'm not here to lecture you. I'm here to remind you that the world is bigger than your small view of it, he states, looking directly at her. But it's clear you're not interested in listening. With that, he leans back in his seat, crossing his arms and staring straight ahead. He can feel the tension around him, the prying eyes of fellow passengers, and he knows that they are witnessing a conflict far too familiar in society. The woman huffs, clearly unsatisfied, but she finally turns her attention back to her coffee. The cabin falls into a tense silence, with the noise of the plane's engines becoming a background hum to their escalating animosity. As the flight progresses, he stares out the window, trying to find solace in the view. Below, the landscape stretches out like a patchwork quilt of fields and towns, a stark contrast to the bitterness swirling within the aircraft. He thinks about the upcoming conference, the opportunity to share his insights, and the importance of fostering inclusivity in the workplace. Despite the hostility next to him, He feels a renewed sense of purpose. He won't let one person's prejudice overshadow his journey or derail his goals. He is determined to rise above, to show not just her, but everyone around him, that respect is not given based on color or background, but earned through character and integrity. As they continue to fly, the man remains resolute, prepared to face whatever challenges lie ahead. The plane steadies into its cruising altitude, and the cabin settles into a rhythm of muffled conversations and the whirring of the engines. The tension between the black man and the woman beside him hangs thick in the air, almost tangible, as if it could be cut with a knife. After a few moments of silence, she finally leans forward, breaking the quiet that had enveloped them. "You know, it's fascinating how you can sit there and act all composed," she says, a hint of sarcasm lacing her voice. "But deep down, I can tell you're just another insecure person trying to play the game." He turns slightly, raising an eyebrow. "Insecure? That's an interesting assumption," he replies, trying to keep his tone even. "I would argue that it's quite the opposite. I'm confident in who I am and what I stand for." "Oh, please," she scoffs, her eyes narrowing. "You think your confidence means anything? You're just a puppet, dancing for the people who pull your strings." The man shakes his head, refusing to engage with her incendiary remarks. Instead, he shifts his focus to the notebook in his lap, hoping to gather his thoughts for the upcoming meeting. He pulls out a pen and begins to jot down some notes, but her voice breaks through the haze of his concentration. "Look at you. Writing notes like that's going to save you. It won't change anything, you know," she says, her tone dripping with disdain. He glances up at her, surprised by her relentless need to provoke. "I'm simply preparing for my meeting. It helps me stay organized," he replies, trying to keep his voice steady. "Right, because that's going to impress the higher-ups. But let's be real. They'll see right through you. They always do," she replies, her tone mocking as she crosses her arms defiantly. He can feel the eyes of the other passengers on them, a mixture of curiosity and concern. Some are whispering to one another, while others pretend to be absorbed in their screens or magazines. He tries to ignore the discomfort of being the center of attention in such an uncomfortable situation. "What do you want from me?" he asks, finally allowing his frustration to surface. "You're clearly set on tearing me down, but I'm not going to give you the satisfaction." "Maybe I just want you to realize that you're not spatial," she retorts, her voice rising. "You think you're some kind of trailblazer, but you're really just a statistic. Just another diversity hire." He feels a surge of anger at her words, a bitter reminder of the challenges he has faced throughout his career. "My worth isn't defined by your narrow perspective," he replies, his voice firmer. "I've worked hard to get to where I am, and I won't let you undermine that." She huffs, rolling her eyes. "It's easy to say that when you've never faced real challenges," she snaps, leaning closer as if to intimidate him. "I mean real struggles, not the kind you write about in your little notepad." He takes a deep breath, grounding himself as he prepares to respond. "I've faced my share of challenges, thank you very much. The difference is that I choose to confront them with dignity, not bitterness," he replies, meeting her gaze with steady resolve. The flight attendants pass by again, offering snacks and drinks, but the atmosphere is electric with tension. One of them glances over, sensing the friction between the two. "Is everything okay here?" she asks, her voice laced with concern. "Everything is fine," the woman snaps, dismissing the attendant with a wave of her hand. "Just a little conversation." "Of course," the attendant replies, giving the man a sympathetic look before moving on. As the attendant walks away, the woman leans in again, her voice low and conspiratorial. You really think you're making a difference, don't you? You think that by being nice and playing the game, you're going to change the world? Newsflash. No one cares. He clenches his jaw, the weight of her words heavy on his shoulders. It's not about changing the world in a day. It's about making incremental changes, fostering an environment where everyone feels valued. If you can't see that, then perhaps you're the one who needs to rethink your perspective. Oh, spare me the motivational speech, she retorts, her voice laced with contempt. You think that just because you can spout off a few platitudes, you're going to make a difference. That's cute, eh? He shakes his head, realizing that further conversation may not yield any positive results. I don't need your validation. I'm not here to impress you, he states firmly, hoping to put an end to the discussion. But she's not finished. You know, you could just stop trying to play the nice guy, she says, her eyes narrowing. It won't get you anywhere. People like you are a dime a dozen. He takes a deep breath, trying to maintain his calm. I refuse to stoop to your level, he replies, his voice steady. I believe in treating people with respect, regardless of how they treat me. It's a choice I make every day. Respect? You think you deserve respect just for existing? She scoffs, leaning back in her seat. That's rich. Respect is earned, and you're just handing it out like candy. He considers her words, recognizing the truth in them. But he also understands that respect goes both ways. I agree that respect is earned, but it's also given. You don't have to agree with someone to treat them with basic decency, he replies, trying to appeal to any sense of reason she might have. Basic decency? That's a laugh, she says, rolling her eyes again. What do you think this is? A feel-good movie? Life doesn't work that way. People are ruthless. You're right. Life can be ruthless, he acknowledges, his tone becoming more reflective. But it's our response to that ruthlessness that defines us. We can choose to uplift each other instead of tearing each other down. The woman hoofs, clearly unimpressed with his perspective. Uplift. Do you really believe that? You think you can just hold hands and sing Kumbaya and everything will magically change? I don't expect miracles, but I do believe in progress, he responds, feeling a sense of determination swell within him. Every small act of kindness counts, and every conversation, no matter how difficult, has the potential to change hearts and minds. She shakes her head, a dismissive laugh escaping her lips. You're so naive. You think the world cares about your little ideals? Let me tell you something. It's all about power, and who has it. You'll learn that soon enough. I've already learned it, he counters, his voice firm. And that's precisely why I fight for equality and respect. Because it matters. Because it's worth it. The cabin falls into an uneasy silence, the other passengers keenly aware of the intensity of the exchange. Some are visibly uncomfortable, while others seem captivated by the confrontation unfolding before them. The woman's expression shifts, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. For the first time, she appears to be considering his words, if only for a moment. You really think you can make a difference? She asks, her voice softer but still laced with skepticism. Not just me, he replies, his tone sincere. We all have a role to play. Change starts with each of us, and it's not always easy, but it's necessary. She leans back in her seat, crossing her arms as if protecting herself from the truths he's sharing. And what makes you so sure people will listen? Because I believe that everyone has the capacity for change, he answers, feeling a spark of hope ignite within him. It may take time, but if we continue to push for understanding and compassion, we can create a better environment for everyone. She rolls her eyes, clearly still skeptical, but the intensity of her anger seems to be waning. "You're living in a fantasy world," she mutters, but there's a hint of hesitation in her tone. The plane begins to experience slight turbulence, causing the passengers to grip their armrests. The woman's bravado falters as she glances nervously out the window. For a moment, the fear in her eyes is unmistakable, a stark contrast to the aggression she had shown earlier. "See, even the plane knows you're wrong," she says, attempting to regain her previous defiance, but the edge in her voice is softer now. "No one is right or wrong in every situation," he replies, his voice steady despite the turbulence. "But we can choose how we respond. You can choose to continue this negativity, or you can try to see the humanity in others." The woman falls silent, her gaze drifting out the window, lost in thought. The turbulence passes, and the plane steadies once more. As they fly through the clouds, she seems to be contemplating his words, and for a brief moment, he wonders if there's a chance for understanding. The cabin remains tense, but a sense of resolution settles in as they both reflect on the conversation. He knows that change takes time, and though he may not convince her in one flight, he hopes that he has planted a seed of thought. As the plane continues on its journey, he returns to his notes, preparing for the meeting ahead, while the woman seems to retreat into her thoughts. The exchange has shifted something within the dynamic between them, and he senses that they are no longer just adversaries. They are two individuals grappling with their beliefs, their identities, and the societal pressures that shape them. He glances at her, noting the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, and for the first time, he feels a pang of empathy. Perhaps beneath her layers of hostility, there lies a deeper struggle, a battle with her own biases and fears. The flight progresses, and the plane moves through the sky, both of them continuing their internal dialogues, wrestling with the weight of their conversation. As the flight continues, the tension between the black man and the woman beside him slowly begins to dissipate, but an unspoken battle remains evident in their body language. He can sense the shift. Her tone has softened, even if slightly, and for the first time since takeoff, she appears to be genuinely considering his words. He steals a glance at her as she stares out the window, her expression a mixture of contemplation and defiance. He knows that beneath her bravado lies a complex narrative, shaped by experiences that have molded her perceptions. The weight of the conversation lingers in the air, and he feels a strange sense of camaraderie emerging from their shared turbulence, both literal and metaphorical. "Do you ever wonder why people like us end up in these positions?" she asks suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. Her gaze remains fixed on the clouds outside, but there's a newfound vulnerability in her question. He hesitates for a moment, surprised by the unexpected turn in the conversation. "I think we all end up where we are because of a series of choices and circumstances," he replies carefully. "Some are within our control, while others aren't. It's the combination that shapes our paths." She nods, her expression contemplative. "That makes sense," she says softly, almost to herself. "But it's also about privilege, isn't it? Some people start off with advantages that others don't." "Yes, privilege plays a significant role," he acknowledges, feeling encouraged that she's opening up. "It can shape our experiences, how we navigate the world, and how we're perceived by others." Do you think I have privilege? She asks, her voice skjebakike with curiosity. I men I grey ippinga mislyckas neighborhood, but I affects me fair share of challenge. I think privilege comes in many forms, he responds thoughtfully. It's not just about economic status. It's also about race, gender, and opportunity. You may have had struggles, but those struggles may not be the same as someone else's, like mine, for example. She turns to look at him, a spark of realization flickering in her eyes. So you think I have blind spots? It's possible, he says, choosing his words carefully. We all do. It's part of being human. But recognizing them is the first step toward understanding and growth. She exhales deeply, her defenses momentarily lowered. I never really thought about it that way. I've always seen my challenges as unique and didn't consider how they might compare to someone else's experiences. He nods, encouraged by her willingness to engage in a deeper dialogue. It's easy to get caught up in our own narratives, but when we take a step back and consider other perspectives, it can really broaden our understanding of the world. Do you think that's why I reacted the way I did earlier? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. I was just so defensive. It's hard for me to admit when I'm wrong. It's human nature to protect ourselves, especially when our beliefs are challenged, he replies gently. But admitting we're wrong doesn't diminish our worth. It actually shows strength. It's a sign of growth. She smiles faintly, a hint of vulnerability breaking through her earlier bravado. You make it sound so easy. Nothing worth doing is easy, he counters with a small grin. But it's worth it if it leads to understanding and change. As they converse, the flight attendants pass by again, serving refreshments to the other passengers. The woman glances at the cart, momentarily distracted, then turns back to him. So what's your story? How did you end up where you are? He takes a moment to reflect. I grew up in a small town where opportunities were limited. My parents worked hard to provide for us, and they instilled in me the value of education and perseverance. He begins. I faced my own challenges, not just in terms of race, but also navigating environments that weren't always welcoming. But I never let that define me. Sounds like a classic success story, she remarks, a hint of sarcasm creeping back into her voice. Maybe, he says with a chuckle. But it was filled with obstacles. There were plenty of moments where I felt out of place, where I questioned if I belonged. I had to prove myself, not just to others, but to myself. What about now? She presses, leaning in slightly, her interest piqued. Do you still feel that way? He hesitates, considering his answer carefully. Sometimes yes. Even in my position now, there are days when I walk into a room and feel like I don't belong. But I've learned to embrace that feeling, to use it as motivation to continue pushing forward. That's admirable, she replies, her voice more genuine now. I don't think I could ever admit to feeling that way. You'd be surprised how many people feel like imposters, he tells her. It's a common struggle, especially in professional environments. But the key is to find your voice and stand firm in your identity, regardless of what others may think. She nods slowly, absorbing his words. I guess I've always been so focused on proving myself that I didn't stop to consider how I'm perceived, she admits, her eyes narrowing in thought. And that's okay, he reassures her. We're all works in progress. Recognizing where we need to grow is part of the journey. It's what makes us human. She leans back in her seat, her expression thoughtful. What if I told you that I've been in situations where I was uncomfortable with someone just because of their background? I would say that you're being honest, he replies. It's natural to feel uncomfortable around things we don't understand, but it's what we choose to do with that discomfort that matters. Right. So what's the answer? Just engage? Ask questions? Exactly, he encourages. Engaging in conversations, asking questions, and being open to learning can help bridge those gaps. It's about breaking down barriers, one interaction at a time. For a moment, they sit in silence, reflecting on the complexities of their conversation. The plane hums softly around them, and he feels the weight of the world they're discussing, the societal expectations, and the prejudices that often seep into everyday interactions. What about you? She asks suddenly, breaking the silence. How do you handle being the target of those biases? He takes a deep breath, considering how to articulate his thoughts. It's not easy. There are days when it gets to me, when I feel like I'm fighting an uphill battle. But I remind myself that my worth isn't determined by others' perceptions. I have to be my own advocate. That sounds exhausting, she replies, a hint of empathy creeping into her voice. I can't imagine having to constantly prove my worth. It is, he admits, but it also drives me to want to create change, to inspire others to see beyond their biases. It's about paving the way for future generations. Future generations? She echoes, her brow furrowing slightly. That's a big responsibility. It is, but it's a responsibility I embrace. If I can contribute to a more inclusive environment, then all the struggles are worth it, he explains, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. And what if I told you that I didn't see that before? That I only saw what was in front of me? She asks, her voice tinged with vulnerability. I'd say that's a step toward understanding, he responds, giving her an encouraging smile. Acknowledging our blind spots is the first step toward growth. It shows that you're willing to change. She seems to mull over his words, and for a moment, he sees a glimmer of hope in her eyes, a flicker of realization that perhaps her worldview is not as fixed as she once believed. I guess I've been stuck in my ways for a long time, she admits, her voice quiet. It's hard to break free from that. Change is always challenging, he says, but it's also necessary. We can't evolve unless we confront our beliefs and biases head on. The plane hits a slight bump, and she grips her armrest again, but this time, there's a softness in her demeanor. I don't want to be that person anymore, the one who judges without understanding. That's a good realization, he replies, genuinely impressed. It shows you're willing to grow, and that's a crucial step. As they continue to talk, the atmosphere begins to shift further, the earlier animosity fading into a more profound understanding. The flight feels less like a battleground and more like an opportunity for connection. Two people navigating their own histories and biases, hoping to find common ground. I guess I've always seen it as black and white, she reflects, her gaze distant. But life is so much more nuanced than that. Exactly, he says, encouraged by her progress. It's about finding the shades of gray, recognizing that everyone has a story that informs who they are. She nods slowly, and he can see the wheels turning in her mind as she processes the implications of their conversation. What if I told you that I wanted to do better? That I didn't want to be part of the problem anymore? I would say that's a brave choice, he replies, his voice warm. It's not easy to confront our biases, but recognizing them is the first step toward making a difference. Maybe I can use my platform to raise awareness, she muses, her voice gaining strength. I work in a company that could benefit from a more inclusive culture. Perhaps I could advocate for that. He feels a surge of pride at her words. That's a fantastic idea. Change often starts at the grassroots level, and using your voice to advocate for inclusivity can have a ripple effect. Wow, she breathes, her eyes brightening with newfound determination. I never thought about how I could use my position to create change. It's empowering. It is. He agrees, feeling a swell of hope. Every voice matters, especially when it challenges the status quo. As they continue their dialogue, he feels a sense of connection forming between them, a recognition that they are both, in their own ways, navigating the complexities of identity, privilege, and bias. Their conversations become less confrontational and more collaborative, both seeking to understand each other rather than to win a battle of ideals. As they near their destination, he senses a shift in her demeanor. She appears more open, her guard lowered, and he can't help but feel optimistic about what this means for their interaction moving forward. Thank you for this conversation, she says sincerely, her voice softened. I know I can be difficult, but you've helped me see things differently. I appreciate your willingness to engage, he replies, his heart swelling with hope. It's not often that we get to have these honest conversations, and it's refreshing. As the plane begins its descent, the horizon outside the window glows with the warm hues of sunset. The glow spills into the cabin, illuminating the faces of the passengers around them, and for the first time, the woman seems genuinely at peace. I guess I'll have to rethink how I approach people in the future, she muses, her eyes reflecting the golden light. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's worth it. It is, he agrees. Change is a journey, and every step forward is a step worth taking. As the plane touches down, he feels a sense of resolution settling in. Their encounter, once fraught with tension, has transformed into a moment of connection, understanding, and potential growth. As they gather their belongings and prepare to disembark, he glances over at her, feeling a sense of hope for the future. I look forward to hearing how you make a difference, he says warmly. Me too, she replies, a genuine smile breaking across her face. You've given me a lot to think about. With that, they step off the plane, their paths having intertwined in unexpected ways. The man walks away, heartened by the possibility that he has sparked a change, however small, in someone else's journey. With that, they step off the plane, their paths having intertwined in unexpected ways. The man walks away, heartened by the possibility that he has sparked a change, however small, in someone else's journey. As the passengers disembark from the plane, the woman and the man exchange a brief but meaningful glance. He feels a strange sense of camaraderie with her, an unexpected bond forged in the crucible of their earlier confrontation. She nods in acknowledgement as they move through the terminal, a silent understanding passing between them. Once in the bustling airport, they part ways, but not without a lingering awareness of their conversation. The air is filled with the sounds of rolling luggage, excited chatter, and the distant announcements echoing through the high ceilings. Yet, amid this cacophony, the man feels a strange clarity settling over him. The dialogue he had shared with her lingers in his mind like a warm ember, glowing with the potential for change. As he navigates the terminal, he reflects on how conversations like the one they had can be catalysts for growth, not just for himself, but for others. He recalls the flicker of vulnerability he saw in her eyes, the way she opened up to the idea of reevaluating her beliefs. He imagines how her newfound resolve to advocate for inclusivity could ripple through her workplace, potentially affecting countless others. Meanwhile, the woman walks away, her thoughts racing. She feels lighter, almost liberated, and as she makes her way toward the exit, she can't help but replay their conversation in her mind. Every word he spoke resonates within her, challenging the core of her beliefs while simultaneously offering her a path toward understanding. It's as if a veil has been lifted, allowing her to see the world through a different lens. Once outside, she pauses for a moment, feeling the cool air against her skin. She takes a deep breath, allowing herself to fully absorb the reality of what just happened. It's one thing to confront biases in a theoretical sense, but another entirely to engage with someone who challenges those preconceived notions face to face. She thinks about how easy it would have been to dismiss him entirely, to remain ensconced in her beliefs. Yet, here she is, standing at a crossroads of possibility. As she makes her way to her car, she pulls out her phone and opens her Notes app. Her fingers hover over the screen for a moment before she begins to type. Meeting with a colleague from HR next week about inclusivity initiatives. She writes with renewed purpose, the ideas flowing from her mind like a torrent. The more she types, the more ideas she has. Workshops on unconscious bias, mentorship programs for underrepresented employees, and even diversity training for all staff members. Back at the airport, the man collects his luggage and heads toward the exit, feeling the weight of their discussion settle in his heart. He can't shake the feeling that this encounter was significant, that it could lead to something greater than just a fleeting moment of understanding. He hopes she follows through on her intention to create change, realizing that the work of dismantling biases is often a community effort. As he steps outside, he takes in the familiar sights of the city he calls home. The evening sky, painted with hues of orange and purple. He pulls out his phone and scrolls through his contacts until he finds his friend, a fellow advocate for social justice. He types out a message. Hey, just had a powerful conversation on the plane with a woman who had some eye-opening realizations about bias. I think we need to reach out to more organizations about the workshops we discussed. With a sense of urgency, he hits send, feeling the thrill of possibility coursing through him. Perhaps this interaction could be the spark that ignites a broader movement, one that reaches beyond their immediate circles. As he walks toward the parking lot, he can't shake the feeling that this moment is part of a larger narrative, a thread in the fabric of his life that is beginning to weave a pattern of purpose and connection. He imagines future conversations with people who hold different views, wondering how many more lives can be touched through genuine engagement and understanding. The next day, the woman arrives at her office, feeling a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The workplace is bustling as usual, but her mind is consumed with thoughts of the man from the plane. She knows that she must follow through on her intentions to promote inclusivity, but she also feels the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. As she settles at her desk, she opens her laptop and begins drafting an email to her manager. Subject: Proposal for Diversity and Inclusion Initiatives. Her fingers dance across the keyboard as she outlines her ideas, drawing from the conversation she had with the man. She emphasizes the need for open dialogue about biases and the importance of creating an environment where every employee feels valued and heard. After she sends the email, she stands up, a surge of confidence pushing her forward. She decides to approach her HR colleague, a woman she knows is passionate about diversity. As she makes her way through the office, she passes by various teams engaged in their work, the hum of conversation blending into a symphony of productivity. But she feels different today. She feels like a change maker. Hey Karen, do you have a moment? she calls out as she spots her colleague across the room. Karen turns, her face lighting up with a smile. Of course! What's up? I just wanted to discuss some ideas I have for promoting inclusivity in our workplace, she replies, her voice steady despite her nerves. I think it's time we take a serious look at our practices. Karen raises an eyebrow, intrigued. I'm all ears. What do you have in mind? As the two women sit down to discuss her ideas, the woman feels a sense of liberation wash over her. This is more than just an initiative. It's a movement toward change. She shares her vision for workshops on unconscious bias, mentorship programs, and open forums where employees can share their experiences. With each idea she presents, she sees Karen's interest growing, her nods of agreement fueling the fire within her. That sounds incredible, Karen exclaims. I've noticed some areas where we can improve, and I think a comprehensive approach could really make a difference. Let's take this to management. The woman feels a rush of excitement. Really? You think they'll be open to it? I believe they will be, Karen assures her. With enough backing from HR and management, we can make this happen. As they plan their next steps, the woman's heart swells with hope. She realizes that their conversation on the plane was just the beginning, a catalyst for something bigger than either of them could have imagined. The man's words echo in her mind, reinforcing her commitment to this journey. Meanwhile, the man is also busy at work, reviewing proposals for diversity initiatives in his own company. He's energized, fueled by the potential for meaningful change, and he recalls the conversation they shared on the plane. His determination to advocate for inclusivity feels more urgent than ever. He drafts a proposal for a series of workshops focused on addressing biases and fostering a culture of understanding. His experience on the flight serves as a powerful reminder that conversations can shift perspectives, and he aims to create a platform for dialogue within his organization. As he prepares to present his ideas to management, he reaches out to the woman again, eager to see how her plans are unfolding. Hey, just wanted to check in. How did your discussions go regarding inclusivity initiatives? Her response is quick and enthusiastic. They went really well. I'm meeting with HR to discuss implementing some workshops. Your words from the plane were a huge inspiration. His heart swells at her response, feeling a sense of pride in how their conversation had ignited a spark in both of them. That's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. It seems like we're on the same path. Absolutely. Let's keep each other updated on our progress, she replies. As their dialogue continues, they both feel a sense of connection that extends beyond their initial encounter. They realize they're not just two individuals grappling with biases. They're allies in a shared mission to foster understanding and inclusivity in their workplaces. Days turn into weeks, and both of them become increasingly active in advocating for change. The woman organizes her first workshop, and she's met with enthusiasm from her colleagues. The room is filled with diverse voices, each sharing their experiences and perspectives on bias and inclusion. The man presents his proposal to management, garnering support and encouragement. As they both witness the momentum building around their initiatives, they realize they've created a ripple effect, one that has the potential to inspire others to engage in the important work of dismantling biases and promoting inclusivity. Through the power of their conversation on the plane, they have both stepped into roles as advocates for change. They've transformed a moment of confrontation into a meaningful collaboration, each paving the way for others to follow. In the following months, they continue to exchange ideas and updates, feeling a sense of camaraderie develop between them. The woman shares stories of colleagues who have found courage in their discussions, and the man recounts how his workshops have led to deeper conversations about privilege and race. They both understand that this journey is ongoing, a commitment to not only confront their biases, but to also create spaces where others can feel empowered to do the same. Each step they take is a testament to the power of dialogue, the ability to find common ground, even in the most unexpected circumstances. As they reflect on their experiences, they realize that the path to change is filled with challenges, but it is also rich with the promise of connection and understanding. They have both embraced their roles as agents of change, motivated by a shared vision of a more inclusive world. The connection they forged on that plane has blossomed into something profound, reminding them that even the most unlikely encounters can lead to transformative experiences. As they navigate the complexities of their respective journeys, they continue to inspire each other, united in their commitment to advocate for a more just and equitable future. As the months pass, the woman and the man find themselves deeply entrenched in their respective roles as advocates for inclusivity within their organizations. The momentum they've generated is palpable. Both their companies are beginning to embrace the transformative potential of diversity and inclusivity in a way that feels both urgent and necessary. They often communicate, sharing successes, challenges, and ideas, their partnership growing stronger with each exchange. One day, the woman receives an email from her company's upper management announcing an upcoming conference focused on diversity and inclusion. They invite employees to submit proposals for breakout sessions. Excited by the opportunity, she feels a rush of inspiration. "What if I propose a joint session with my colleague?" she muses, recalling the impactful conversation they had on the plane. Determined, she reaches out to the man. "Hey, I just got this email about a diversity conference. What do you think about proposing a joint session on the power of dialogue in overcoming biases?" His response is instantaneous, filled with enthusiasm. "Absolutely. I think it's a fantastic idea. We can showcase how our conversations sparked our initiatives and share practical strategies for others to engage in these dialogues." With that shared excitement, they begin to brainstorm their session. They outline key points they want to cover: the importance of creating safe spaces for dialogue, strategies for fostering open communication, and the role personal stories play in shaping understanding. As they work, they both feel a renewed sense of purpose, invigorated by the prospect of reaching a broader audience. After several rounds of drafting and revising their proposal, they submit it, holding their breath in anticipation. The days that follow are filled with a mix of excitement and anxiety as they await a response. Finally, they receive the confirmation that their session has been accepted. Both of them can hardly contain their excitement. This is a pivotal moment, a chance to amplify their message and inspire others to engage in similar dialogues. As the conference date approaches, they immerse themselves in preparations. They share anecdotes from their journey, emphasizing how their personal experiences shaped their understanding of bias and the importance of confronting uncomfortable truths. They practice their presentation, each time growing more comfortable and confident in the message they are delivering. On the day of the conference, they arrive early, their nerves buzzing with anticipation. The venue is filled with participants from various backgrounds, each eager to learn and engage in discussions about diversity and inclusion. As they set up their presentation materials, the man looks over at the woman, his eyes gleaming with determination. "We're going to make a difference today," he says, his voice steady. "I know we will," she replies, feeling a surge of hope. "Let's remind everyone that change starts with conversations." As they step onto the stage, the room fills with energy. They introduce themselves, sharing the story of their initial encounter on the plane, illustrating how that moment of confrontation blossomed into a partnership focused on advocating for change. The audience listens intently, captivated by their narrative. Throughout the session, they facilitate discussions that encourage participants to share their own experiences with bias and inclusivity. They create small group activities that allow attendees to practice engaging in difficult conversations, breaking down the barriers that often keep people from talking openly about race and privilege. The atmosphere in the room shifts. Participants begin to share their stories, their voices rising in a collective expression of vulnerability and courage. One woman speaks up, her voice trembling. "I've always struggled with how to approach these topics, but hearing your story has inspired me. I want to create a safe space at my workplace, but I don't know where to start." The man responds with empathy, encouraging her to take small steps. Start by sharing your story. Encourage others to do the same. It's in those shared experiences that we find understanding. As the session progresses, the energy in the room continues to build. Participants engage in deep discussions, challenging each other to reflect on their biases and consider how they can become advocates for inclusivity in their own workplaces. The woman and the man circulate among the groups, offering guidance and sharing their insights, their hearts swelling with pride as they witness the connections forming before them. By the end of the session, the atmosphere is electric, the applause is thunderous, and the participants express their gratitude for the opportunity to engage in such a meaningful dialogue. As they step off the stage, the woman and the man exchange a glance filled with understanding and accomplishment. "Can you believe that?" she breathes, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "People are really ready to have these conversations." "It's incredible," he replies, a grin breaking across his face. "We've ignited something here. I can feel it." After the conference, they receive numerous messages from participants, thanking them for their honesty and inspiration. Many express a desire to connect further, wanting to continue the dialogue beyond the confines of the conference. The woman and the man realize that they have tapped into a deeper need for connection and understanding within their communities. As they return to their respective workplaces, they are invigorated by the momentum they've created. They begin collaborating on a series of follow-up workshops, aiming to provide ongoing support for individuals eager to explore diversity and inclusion further. The demand for their sessions grows, and they soon find themselves engaged in conversations that span across departments, companies, and even industries. One afternoon, while they're discussing ideas for a new workshop, the woman pauses, looking thoughtfully at the man. "You know, I never would have imagined that our chance encounter on the plane would lead to all of this. It's remarkable how one conversation can spark such change." He nods in agreement, reflecting on the journey they've taken together. It really shows the power of connection and vulnerability. We never know how our actions will ripple out into the world. Their partnership deepens as they navigate the challenges of bringing their ideas to fruition. They face obstacles, some colleagues resistant to change, logistical hurdles in organizing workshops, and moments of self-doubt. Yet, through it all, they lean on each other for support, their friendship becoming a cornerstone of their advocacy work. As they build this new initiative, they also draw on their personal experiences to develop a framework for their workshops. They incorporate elements like storytelling, role-playing scenarios, and interactive discussions, all designed to create an engaging and safe environment for participants to explore their biases. The workshops soon expand beyond their initial plans, attracting attention from higher management. One day, the woman receives an email from her company's CEO, expressing interest in attending one of their sessions. She feels a mixture of excitement and anxiety at the prospect. What if they don't take it seriously? She wonders aloud to the man. They will, he reassures her. We've created something valuable, and the fact that the CEO wants to be involved means they recognize its importance. When the day arrives for the CEO to attend, the room is filled with an atmosphere of anticipation. The participants, many of whom had been part of earlier sessions, are eager to demonstrate the progress they've made. The woman takes a deep breath, grounding herself as she prepares to facilitate the discussion. As the session unfolds, the participants engage in thoughtful conversations, sharing personal stories and challenges they've faced. The CEO listens attentively, their presence a reminder of the importance of leadership in fostering a culture of inclusivity. At the end of the session, the CEO addresses the group, expressing gratitude for the open dialogue and emphasizing their commitment to making diversity and inclusion a priority within the organization. As the session concludes, the woman feels a surge of accomplishment. They've not only created a space for dialogue, but also engaged the highest levels of leadership in the conversation. This is just the beginning, she tells the man later, their excitement palpable. We have the potential to drive real change. As their initiative gains momentum, they find themselves invited to speak at various conferences, corporate events, and community organizations. Each new opportunity feels like a chance to amplify their message further and engage even more people in these vital conversations. They become known for their engaging and impactful sessions, fostering an environment where everyone feels heard and valued. The more they speak, the more they recognize the need for systemic change. They begin collaborating with other organizations, creating networks of advocates dedicated to promoting inclusivity across industries. They realize that while individual conversations are crucial, they must also work toward changing policies and practices that perpetuate bias and exclusion. One evening, as they prepare for yet another workshop, the woman reflects on how far they've come. Can you believe it? We're actually doing this, she says, a sense of awe in her voice. We are, the man replies, his expression serious, yet proud. And it's only going to grow. We have a responsibility now to keep pushing forward. With renewed determination, they set their sights on the future. Their goal is to create a lasting legacy of inclusivity within their workplaces and beyond, paving the way for others to follow in their footsteps. They begin to envision a series of programs that extend beyond workshops, mentorship initiatives, leadership training, and community outreach efforts that engage underrepresented voices. As they delve deeper into their advocacy work, they discover the profound impact it has not only on their professional lives, but also on their personal growth. They learn to confront their biases more rigorously and recognize the power of vulnerability in fostering connection. Through this journey, they find a shared mission that unites them, deepening their friendship and commitment to making a difference. Their partnership transforms from a professional collaboration into a bond built on mutual respect, shared experiences, and the understanding that they are both part of something greater than themselves. They celebrate each success, no matter how small, knowing that every conversation, every connection, and every moment of vulnerability contributes to the larger narrative of change. As the sun sets on a particularly rewarding day, they sit together, reflecting on their journey thus far. We've accomplished so much, the woman says, her voice filled with gratitude. I can't imagine having done this without you. Same here, he replies, a smile spreading across his face. I'm grateful for our connection and the impact we're making together. Here's to many more conversations and the work ahead. With a sense of purpose renewed, they lift their glasses in a toast. Two advocates committed to fostering understanding and inclusivity, determined to continue their journey and inspire others to join them. In that moment, they realize that the impact of their conversation on the plane has blossomed into something truly extraordinary, a legacy of advocacy that will echo far beyond their individual lives. Together, they are changing the narrative, one conversation at a time.